You're listening to Raceway Ministries Today. Thanks for joining us for Raceway Ministries Today. In just a few moments, we're going to give you the latest of what's going on in motorsports outreach through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. Well, I would like to welcome everybody to this edition of Raceway Ministries Today. Today is March the 11th, 2021. My name is Roger Marsh. I'm the director of the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. And by the way, we'd love for you to connect with us. You can find us at racewayministries.org, or you can look us up on Facebook at National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. We also have a YouTube channel that goes by that same name. And if you go there, you can pick up on some of the other podcasts that we've done in the past. But I'm extremely excited today to have with us Connie Yancey. Connie and her husband Tim are from Hampton, Georgia, and Connie has been the executive director of Raceway Ministries Atlanta for several years. I'm not going to share how many years unless she wants to share that. Connie, how many years have you been there? Do you want to share that?
Well, Raceway Ministries Atlanta has been operating under this particular model for 15 years, but Elliott, our son, did it for, I'm guessing, 5 years, and then the board voted me in, and I was a reluctant leader, and so the board gave me a week to pray about it, and God began to tell me I was going to have to give up my private practice as a speech pathologist, and that he was getting ready to grow this ministry, and that I was the unlikely one. And so we've been totally doing it for 15 years, and I'm shocked at that because it's been fun and it's gone by fast.
Well, things do go by fast when you're having a good time. And I would have to say that in spite of the fact that you were a reluctant leader stepping into that position, God had something very special in mind, because you have done an outstanding job there with Raceway Ministries Atlanta. You know, you guys have an upcoming NASCAR race weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. March 20th, 21st, I believe, is the date, and that's just a few days away from where we are today at March 11th. And over the years, those weekends have proven to be a very busy time for Raceway Ministries Atlanta. So I want us to talk about it, and there's a reason why I want us to talk about it. We're at a point with the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries where we're going to be restarting and reinventing some of our ministry teams at some of the venues. We also have some new opportunities coming up at some venues where we've never been before. So I think our discussion today will give some great insight for those who might be listening, and particularly those who might be a part of those restarts or those new starts. Now, I would have to tell you, Connie, I have some great memories of my experiences at Atlanta Motor Speedway. In fact, it was 1998 when I went to my first annual meeting of the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. That was 3 years before I became the director, and had a great time there. I think we met in the clubhouse out in the parking lot and had a great meeting there. I think there were 60, 75 people there, something like that. And I really enjoyed the meeting. My eyes were wide open as I took it all in and tried to grasp everything that was going on with Raceway Ministries work. But my race weekends there with you guys have opened my eyes even wider to be able to comprehend all the different things that you guys do during a race weekend there at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Your group, Raceway Ministries Atlanta, leaves a huge footprint there during race events. And I got to tell you, my hat's off to you guys. I'm so thankful to God for all the many things that you guys have been able to do, because you reach a lot of people during a race weekend. So I hope you're ready to talk about it a lot, because I want to listen a lot, all right?
All right, that'd be great.
All right, good. Well, listen, I've mentioned that you guys leave a big footprint there. Let's go back to pre-pandemic. During a non-pandemic year, my observation, my experience has been you guys load your schedule up with all kinds of events and activities. So I'd like for us to just list some of the activities and some of the events that you guys do on a non-pandemic NASCAR weekend. Can you list some of them for us?
Yes, so on a non-pandemic NASCAR weekend, we now typically have a little over 500 believers with feet on the ground.
Wow.
And you ask about the events, and let me tell you something. I could have never, ever written a business plan or a business model for how this has grown. Only God can do that, and we're totally dependent on Him.
Yeah.
But here is the filter through which we decide what we're going to do. The racetrack will let us do anything that we're willing to do because, let's face it, we're free labor, right?
That's absolutely right.
We are not going to direct traffic. We're not going to park cars. The filter through which we make decisions about what we're going to do is this. We will only do events or activities that allow us to intentionally cultivate relationships with unbelievers. So the things that I can tell you that we do have been decided through that filter.
Let me stop you right there for a minute, Connie, because that is such an important point. You know, my experience with Raceway Ministries teams is many times they are just willing to jump in and do anything and everything, to the point that some of our Raceway Ministry teams, you almost wouldn't be able to discern that they're a ministry group because they are so involved in service activities. And some of them are not service activities that build relationships with people. So I love your idea of that filter. That is tremendous.
The interesting thing is that for probably 12 of these 15 years, I'm the one who has said it to the execs at the track. I'll say, oh, we'd love to do that, but we only take on events or activities where we can intentionally cultivate relationships with unbelievers. Now they're saying it back to me. They'll say, well, I want to ask you to do something, but I don't know if you can intentionally cultivate relationships with unbelievers. And I say, tell me about it, and then we'll talk about it. Now they're saying it back to me.
That is such a great idea, Connie. You know, I'm not amazed at that because I know God's at work behind the scenes. But again, I want to repeat, that is such an important standard and is such an important component to put into the mix when you're building your Raceway Ministry schedule for a race weekend. And apparently over the years, the staff there at AMS has become accustomed to who you are, what you do, and they know that you're going to do things well. And so apparently they've learned to respect the filter that you've thrown out there. What a great working relationship that is.
Yes, it is. And this filter allows us to graciously say no to some things, but enthusiastically say yes to many other things.
Sure. You know, I can recall a few years ago at one of our speedways, the Raceway Ministry team was asked to take surveys for, I think it was an insurance company, if I'm not mistaken, and they were even asking the Raceway Ministry team members to wear shirts that had the logo for the insurance company. And what we had to do was graciously offer to them that that's not really what we had signed up for, and it really didn't fit into what we were trying to accomplish at the Speedway. I was very grateful that we didn't get a lot of pushback from that, but it's just one of those occasions where we had to stop and say, you know, this is not what we do. But the thing that's different about what you say is that's been your filter that you use personally. That's been the filter that you use as a ministry team, and it's the filter that you have given to the Raceway so that there is a common understanding of why you're there and what you're willing to do. Again, fantastic strategy. Way to go. I would say that's awesome.
Thank you.
Now, because of that, my observation has been you guys just pull out the stops at the Raceway. Let me just name a couple of things that I would say have been unique at Atlanta Motor Speedway that I think really could be great ministry tools across the board at all the Speedway venues. Christian wrestling. I remember when I was at Atlanta a few years ago, you had a Christian wrestling team out of Dallas, and they did a fantastic job drawing the fans together out there in the campground. Another thing that you guys did was, and this is the only time I've ever seen a Jenga game go all the way to completion. One night in the campground out there, we had a Jenga game with 2x4s, I think it was, and we had the most drunk guys I've ever seen in my life playing the Jenga game. They could hardly walk themselves, but they got that stack of Jenga boards up about 8 feet tall and finally got to the point where they didn't have any moves to make, and this one guy won it, and I'm sure he never even knew he won it.
Yeah.
It was tremendous. And then another thing you guys did was you kind of had a location in an RV campground where you would have the RV campers come to you and tell what they needed from Walmart. And then you guys would go to Walmart and come back and distribute their items that they had ordered. And you kind of ran errands to town for them, so to speak, while they were there enjoying the races. What a unique and creative thing. Those are the kinds of things that I've seen you guys do that just strike me as being absolutely creative, not really outside the box, but who would have ever dreamt that those things would be effective and they would be good ministry tools, but you guys put them to work. I assume that was part of your filter.
Yes, so what you were describing is our concierge service for the high-end campers, the
Yes.
ones who are overlooking Turn 1, the ones at Trackside Terrace,
Yes, ma'am.
and the people in Club 1. So we have a married couple that are very socially adept. They're professionals, and we give them a camping spot on site, and then they are the concierge service for those 3 campgrounds. We have an apple orchard in North Georgia that donates the apples, and there's a lady who makes apple pie jelly, I think. It's delicious.
Well, it sounds good.
And the concierge service goes RV to RV, delivers that in a gift box, and inside there is a magnet that they can put on their refrigerator that has a designated phone number for the concierge service, and they can call and we'll help them do anything. So we do go to the grocery store for them. We have gotten calls in the middle of the night when a commode overflows, and I'll run to Walmart and get towels, and the rest of the team will go help clean up the RV. Whatever they need,
Wow.
that concierge service provides that.
That is so awesome.
Roger, let me tell you, the people who are in the high-end campgrounds have very different physical needs from the ones who are in unreserved tent camping.
Yes.
But the majority of them are on level ground spiritually. They have the same spiritual needs. And
Sure.
so we meet the needs in the individual campgrounds. We identify and meet the needs in the campgrounds with the intent of, after cultivating the relationship, we look for opportunities to share the gospel with them.
Wow, that is so awesome. Well, one of many, many activities that you guys do, and you know, many of the activities that you do are very typical of Raceway Ministries work. You know, ADA rides on golf carts. You guys have had some tremendous pancake breakfast before Sunday morning worship out in the campground. You know, you've done music concerts. You've done all kinds of things. How in the world do you folks come up with all of these creative ideas?
Well, it falls in the cultivating relationships strategy
Okay.
and meeting the needs. So unreserved tent camping, we do a breakfast there. Now, we used to do just pancakes. Now it's a full-blown breakfast.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's because, quite honestly, unreserved tent campers get there and they've spent all their money, most of it on booze, and they don't have a lot of food.
Sure.
And so we can bring them into a breakfast and have table hosts who get to know them. We've celebrated birthdays. We've had memorial services. We do life with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then that breakfast on Sunday morning segues into the worship service.
Right.
So that's in unreserved tent camping. So there's a strategy behind each one of these services that we do, and that is to ultimately lead them to a conversation about Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean every year. It's cultivating the relationship and watching for where the Holy Spirit's working and being willing to step in.
Sure. What it sounds like to me is you're very aware of different levels of cultural background, demographics of people at the Speedway in different locations. And it sounds like you pretty well observe what they might need and create your ministry strategy based on what's needed in different locations at the campground. You mentioned unreserved camping being different from the high-end RV camping, and boy, that's very, very true. But being sensitive to what those needs are opens the way for a lot of creativity in terms of of thinking of what they need and then moving forward and actually planning and implementing that. What a great strategy again. Now, how many locations do you normally have at the Speedway? I know when I've been there before, you've been in unreserved camping, and then I remember one occasion we had another children's activity center out. Seemed like it was off the parking lot out in the front of the Speedway. We did Pinewood Racing and had some other games out there, and then you do the high-end RV campers there in Turn 1. How many locations do you guys normally have at the Speedway?
So we have 14 different opportunities to serve.
Okay.
But we have 4 hubs around the property. One is our volunteer tent where they check in, but we also feed them and let them come there and rest. And let me tell you something, our responsibility is as much to our volunteers as it is to our guests at the Speedway, because as much as I would like to believe that all of our volunteers are committed Christians, they're not. A lot of them are just friends of friends who like to drive a golf cart.
Right.
And sitting in that volunteer tent, feeding them and sitting around the table with them affords a lot of opportunities. So that's one of our hubs.
Okay.
The other one is unreserved tent camping where the breakfast is. The second one is the children's ministry tent in family camping. And then the third one is the golf cart corral where the ADA carts, the ramp carts, and about 30 courtesy golf carts go out of, but we do not let them get on those carts and leave without reminding them of our purpose.
Good.
And that Jesus was always in, well, not always, but often in crowd, and he was always looking for the one that the Holy Spirit was doing something in their heart, that the Father was drawing to himself. And so we have banners that say, "Who's your one?"
Yeah.
And it reminds them that they're to be praying and looking for their one.
Oh, that is so good. So good. Well, you're staying on task, staying on purpose in the midst of everything that you do out there. And that's so important because it's easy to get distracted and get caught up in the excitement. And you have to stay focused. Now, what about non-NASCAR events at the track? I know at some of the other SMI speedways, particularly here in Texas, we've done Friday night drag racing and other activities too. Do you guys do any non-NASCAR events out there at AMS?
Yes, we do, because I like to keep my volunteers involved throughout the year. That keeps them excited and plugged in with us. So up until last year, we did Friday night drag races.
Okay.
And I'm gonna tell you up front, we're not gonna go back and do Friday night drags anymore. And this is why. Over the years, I can't seem to get the volunteers interested. And if it becomes Connie and Tim and Elliott's deal, then that's not Raceway Ministries.
I sure understand.
Those are hard decisions to make, to cut something out, because you can always justify why you're doing it. But we're not going to do Friday night drags. And then we have 2 events on each end of what I consider our season. And the other one outside the NASCAR races is the Imagine Festival. And that is an electronic dance music festival that brings about 40,000 young people, and quite honestly, it's electronic dance music concerts in the infield that go all night long, and it's all about nudity and drugs.
Wow.
Among young people. You'll never see this published in anything that we do, but we have a trained human trafficking team that works that event, because that is a shopping mall for human traffickers.
Absolutely.
And we're out there all night long, and then we have another part of the team that's out there during the day as the kids are recovering. And then we learned that they often come to the shower houses and they stand in line for an hour to an hour and a half to get in the shower houses. So we have hotels that donate shampoo and soap, and we just set up a tent outside the shower houses and give them free shampoo and shaving cream and toothpaste and toothbrushes, and they're standing in line, and so we just get to engage them and just talk to them.
That's so awesome.
So that's the Imagine Festival. And then in 21, this year, right after the NASCAR race, we'll be doing Supercross, and then follow that 2 weeks later with Monster Jam. So
wow.
We're going to be busy this year.
You are going to be busy. Well, now you mentioned that you have had as many as 500 people out there volunteering with you. That kind of answers one of my questions, and that is, how many volunteers do you have involved at your events? And I'm sure it varies from one event to another, but how in the world do you organize all those volunteers? How do you recruit them? How do you train them? How do you give out assignments? What's your personal leadership strategy there with your team to get all that energy moving in the right direction?
So I like for people to do what they enjoy and what they're comfortable doing, and I certainly can't choose that for them. Now, I do speak at churches and Rotary clubs and anytime somebody needs a free speaker, right? But honestly, most of our recruiting is done by word of mouth through our volunteers. And we have some who come from South Carolina, South Georgia, Florida. They're faithful. They come every year. They love doing it. But the way they sign up is through ivolunteer.com.
Okay.
And that is an excellent site because I can put all the information they need. And like my volunteers for race weekend, 3 days and then again 1 day before, they will receive an email that's already set up in the site that tells them what they're supposed to wear, what time they're supposed to be there, how do you enter the property, where do you park, where do you go after that, what you're going to do about meals. Everything is on there and it communicates with them so they can feel comfortable about coming. It's kind of an imposing place to be. Think about Texas. That's if you've never been on property. And so this just holds their hand. And then I have a confession to make about training.
Okay.
The first several years, we required everybody to go through training. And then as our volunteer base grew and we had so many, the majority of them were the same people year after year after year, God convicted me this year that I had become like the children of Israel and I had let that slide, the training slide.
Okay.
And he really convicted me. And I asked the Lord to forgive me for that because I don't want just seat fillers or just volunteers. I want people who are intentionally taking the gospel to a lost world. And we're walking among dead people.
That's right.
And so this year I shut down our iVolunteer site and would not let anyone sign up until they had been through evangelism training with me online. We did it I did about 10 Zoom sessions, and they had to go through that before they could have an access code to sign up on iVolunteer.
First of all, I love the ivolunteer.com approach because some of the logistical information that can consume a lot of time at training can be taken care of through that website, it sounds like.
Yes, it can.
But if you double up with the website and do your evangelism training before they're even admitted into the logistics of what they're going to do when they get there and where do they go and what do they wear, you've really covered both of the bases. And it sounds like a very good approach. Now, again, that is ivolunteers.com? ivolunteersingular.com. Okay. All right.
And if anybody wants to use that, it takes some doing. They have videos and things you can watch, and they're very helpful when you send in a question. But if they want some help with how to initially set it up, they're welcome to call me.
Okay.
I'd be happy to help them.
All right, good.
Because incidentally, I would like to say that in all of those 14 things that we do, I went to Kentucky and JT Marsh and his team trained me on how to do fan information kiosks. I went to Charlotte to learn how to do grandstand ambassadors. I always work the new initiatives first somewhere else.
Okay.
And I went to Darlington and just learned a lot from Jimmy Sanderson and his team.
Okay,
and so
good.
I went to learn from somebody else and to practice before I asked my volunteers to do it.
Well, that's one of the things that we're trying to expand on, and that is getting a lot of interaction between our Raceway Ministry teams so that we can learn from one another, learn with one another, and exchange ideas. And so what you've just described is the way Raceway Ministries really should work, at least at the national level. Well, now, for our listeners, I want to remind you that we are talking today with Connie Yancey. Connie is the Executive Director of Raceway Ministries Atlanta, and she and her ministry team there have done an outstanding job through the years of providing ministry to the fans at NASCAR events and many other events there at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and they've also done lots of other things besides racing. If you've been tuned in here, you've heard Connie talk about some of the things that they've been able to do in addition to the race events, which includes electronic dancing and other events that simply draw lots of people. And Connie, you mentioned that if people needed more information about ivolunteer.com, they could get in touch with you. Is it okay to give out your phone number and your email?
Absolutely.
Okay. You can reach Connie at 404-402-9101. And you can reach her at Connie at rmatl.org. Connie, that's great information. I hope our people will take you up on that and get in touch and kind of learn from you some of the strategies and approaches that you take to build an effective team there at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, shifting gears a little bit, how do you interface with the staff there at the Speedway? A person would have to conclude that based on everything that you guys are able to do there, you have good relations with the staff. And my observation has been through the years that you guys have great relationships with the staff there. So how do you interface with them, and what are the keys to having good relations with the staff at a speedway like Atlanta?
Well, we're actually very lucky or blessed, however you want to say it, because Ed Clark, the president of Atlanta Motor Speedway, is a believer. And so is Brandon Hutchison, who is the general manager. And there are actually several believers on staff and some who are not. And they're glad to have us there. But one thing that gave us credibility with them from the very beginning was never, and this is a cardinal rule with us, we never ask for perks like free tickets, because they have a lot of people coming to them and they are offering to do something for the track with one hand, but they have the other hand behind their back expecting free tickets or something from the track.
Exactly.
And so we made it very clear to them that we're here to serve you and we're here to serve your guests in the best way possible. And now they know they can trust us.
Good.
And that makes a huge difference. And even several years ago, we had one of our volunteers who asked for free tickets, and they called me and they said, yeah, we hate to be a tattletale, but one of your volunteers just asked for free tickets and acted like they were supposed to get them. And I said, well, you know the rule. We don't do that.
Yeah.
So you don't give them to them.
Yeah.
And now,
Good.
Roger, I don't know if you know this, but Elliott and I are both chaplains at the track.
Good.
So we're in an
Good.
official mode there now, which
Awesome.
gives us an opportunity to walk in everybody's door and talk to them.
I know that hasn't come easily. Those kind of privileges and those kind of opportunities come about because of high levels of trust. And you've made an excellent point. It's a point to be well taken by anyone who might be listening. You have to establish credibility, and you have to work hard to establish that level of trust, and you have to work hard to maintain it. And that means you need to communicate very clearly to the staff there what your expectations are for your volunteers, and you have to make sure that your volunteers understand what the expectations are. And when you do that, it opens up lots of opportunities. Well, congratulations on being able to be chaplains there.
Yeah, it is energizing. It's gas in my tank. It really is. I love the staff.
And they are good people. I've met Ed a few times. I've had some meetings with Brandon, and they're very, very good people. And I know they have a deep appreciation for you guys and what you do. So congratulations on those relationships. But as we've always said in Raceway Ministries work, it's all about relationships, and we can't underscore that enough. Well, listen, all the things that we've talked about so far have been pretty typical during a non-pandemic year. But what about last year? Based on y'all's rich history of having good relations with the track and excellence in terms of planning plenty of activities, last year was totally different for everyone. So tell us about 2021 and what you guys were able to do during the pandemic.
So Atlanta was the first sporting event to be shut down, and we were shut down on Thursday of race weekend. So I watched $10,000 in tents and equipment go up and come down in the same day.
Oh, boy.
And that's about a third of our annual budget is $10,000.
Right.
And so we spent a year praying and asking God what to do. And we ended up raffling off an AR-15, and then right before Christmas we raffled off his and hers Glocks for Christmas.
Okay.
We did 100 tickets at $40 a piece, and for the AR-15 we sold out in less than a week, just putting it on Facebook. And for the Glocks, we sold out in 24 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
So we almost got our we got 8,000 back, and I take that back. We netted about 3,000 on that.
Wow.
Honestly, in 2021, I think that's why God convicted me about not training my people to share their faith, because I spent a lot of time in 2021 praying about, Lord, what do you want this ministry to look like? And
Okay.
are we valid? And what direction do you want us to go? We
Sure.
never say we've always done it that way. We're constantly adapting and changing. And listen, I am helpless without God leading this ministry.
Amen.
Absolutely helpless.
Amen.
And so that's what we did. We had 2 auctions to raise some money, and I spent the year praying about what to do.
Well, I can't think of a better way to invest your time when everything else is at a standstill than to be involved in prayer. And then everybody was on Facebook and doing social media stuff during the pandemic year. So what a great time to have an online auction. One of the questions about that, though, is a year is a long time to go between race weekend activities. Did you do anything to maintain your relationship with the staff at the track during the year? I mean, I've been around racing long enough to know that sometimes if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. So, what about the whole year without being involved at the track, staying in touch with the staff? Did you continue to minister to the staff, contact them? How'd you do that?
So there are a few that I stayed in contact with, and there were opportunities with them, but they weren't in the office until after January of this year, really.
Okay.
And there was limited staff. We don't live very far from the track, so when I would drive by the track property and see a car there, I'd go up and speak to them.
Okay.
No, there was nothing scheduled or intentional about it. It was very just natural,
Okay.
Organic.
Well, maintaining those relationships is very, very important. And so what a great way to do it. Just watch and see if a car's there and then stop by and at least say hi. Yeah, what a great thing. Well, now, I don't know about Georgia, but here in Texas, we just this week have had some of the bans lifted in terms of opening of businesses and wearing masks and those sort of things. So it seems to be loosening up a little bit, and the statistics tell us that we're very likely on the tail end of the pandemic. Certainly not over yet, but at least things are improving. So as we begin to emerge from the most serious part of the pandemic, what do you guys have in store for March 20th, 21st, and what do you have in store for the rest of the year?
So what we have in store for race weekend is a great opportunity, because, and this is what I've told all of our volunteers in training, is that the people who are coming back to Atlanta Motor Speedway for this race, and by the way, Sunday is sold out at about 20,000 tickets.
Good.
Those people are coming off of a year of uncertainty. Some of them have had deaths in their families. Some of them have lost jobs. At the very least, they're like all of us going, when is this going to end? And I believe that God is going to give us more and more opportunities to share hope and share life with people. This is going to be an unusual year, and that's why we have to be prepared. But as far as race weekend is concerned, we have to wear face masks. Everybody has to have on masks. There can be no gathering, period. So it's going to be very different for the fans, and we need to permeate that track with our people we have Raceway Ministries face masks that identify us, and many of them identify us by our logo anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But the RV campers, one thing that makes NASCAR fans unique is they come back every year and camp in the same place where their grandparents and parents brought them.
Yeah.
This year, they're not allowed to do that. They are being assigned a slot, and all the RVs have to be parallel to each other and facing the same direction. They're not allowing any compounds where a family might buy several slots and then set up RVs like in a U shape. That's not allowed. Right. Everything has to be parallel. And everybody's temperature has to be taken, and they have to fill out a COVID form. So we have mayors in 4 campgrounds, and we're providing a lot of volunteers helping them with just the logistics so it can go as smoothly as it can.
Okay.
And then for the people who are driving in and going to park, one thing that's different even this year for Atlanta and different from how Daytona did it is they are not allowed to bring closed coolers into the campgrounds. They can bring it in clear plastic bags. I mean, not in the campgrounds, into the grandstands. And so while I said we would not direct traffic or park cars, we are going to have teams in the parking lots with plastic bags in hand to meet those who have coolers so they don't walk all the way to the gates only to discover that they can't take their cooler in.
Oh, what a great idea.
So what I envision, and if it works out, is that they come from the parking lot where they've met us to the grandstands. Those who need ADA carts, we will have those in the ADA lot. We also will be running ramp golf carts up and down the ramps. At the top of the ramps, after they've been through and gotten their temperature checked, I mean, think about everything they're going to go through just to get in the grandstands.
Yes.
Then we're going to have greeters at the top of the ramps with hand sanitizer and just welcoming them. Just, we're so happy you're here. And if you can't find your seat, here's a grandstand ambassador. So my thought is that we get to usher them and smooth out the rough edges from the moment they get on property to the moment they get in their seat.
You bet. So if a person were to volunteer, what would they possibly be assigned to do when they get there? You know, I'm sure you have leaders of those different ministry activities that are kind of coordinating that, but if just a Joe Blow volunteer decided, I want to go to Atlanta Motor Speedway next weekend and be a part of the activity, what would you probably assign them to do, and what could they expect?
So they would go to I Volunteer, and all of the shifts are on there, how many hours you have to work, and there are descriptions. But where we need people, our golf cart drivers, I call them our warriors.
Mm-hmm.
They show up the second I Volunteer opens up, the golf cart slots fill up. So
I'm
those
sure.
slots are full.
Oh, yeah.
And they show up rain, shine, sleet, hail, or snow. I mean, they are there. They're awesome.
Yeah.
But we need volunteers for those ramp greeters and
Okay.
in the parking lots and for grandstand ambassadors.
Okay.
And really, those are, like, even if you had teenagers, they could serve as ramp greeters because those are safe and
Okay.
easy positions. But the shifts are on I Volunteer, and you can sign up for one or more shifts, and then you get an email with all the information you need in that email.
Good. So how many volunteers do you think you need for the weekend?
Well, for the weekend, I'm actually going to have about 100 volunteers out there, but I still need about 20.
Oh, okay.
And no matter what you think, that's not keeping me awake at night.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like you've got it well thought out, well prayed through, and it sounds like God has put on your heart the right things to do to make for an effective weekend of racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway, as well as a great weekend for building relationships and having opportunities to intersect with the lives of people who have needs and share the gospel with them. So, Connie, I just can't tell you enough how much I respect you and your team and what all you guys do. You're truly one of the championship Raceway Ministry teams that we have across the nation, and we're very, very grateful for your leadership. And I hope you don't consider what you do as insignificant, because you're not only a great leader there, but you're a great pace setter for all of our other ministries that we do across the United States. Let me ask you this before we close. What have you discovered to be the key ingredients to make Raceway Ministries work effective and successful?
Roger, I appreciate you sending me that question. It gave me time to think about it.
Good.
And I wrote down 5 things.
Okay, good.
One is always be evaluating the effectiveness of what you're doing and be willing to adapt and change. Not
Okay.
because we've always done it. Like I said, we're not going to do Friday night drag because our volunteers clearly aren't into that, right?
Right.
So the next one is keep the main thing the main thing. If we're not looking for opportunities to share the gospel, then we're just a civic club.
Exactly.
And don't get distracted by the task.
Mm-hmm.
We can get all excited about driving a golf cart or being a grandstand ambassador, but the deal is that we're looking for opportunities to share the gospel.
Sure.
The second one is see all people as valuable to God because Jesus paid the highest price for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That includes track staff, our guests, and our volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As the leaders, we've got, and listen, I've got some volunteers that signed up this time that I'm going, we all have them, right? That you go, I don't know if I want them on the front lines. And God said, yeah, they're mine. And I've prompted them to sign up, and you're going to be happy you have them.
Yeah.
The third one is follow Jesus's example. Meet physical needs first and use that as a tool to talk about spiritual needs.
Mm-hmm.
When you're using that tool, be keenly aware of what the Holy Spirit is doing around you. And as I said earlier, Jesus was often in crowds, but he stopped and looked at Zacchaeus and said, hey, I want to go to lunch at your house today. Or the woman who touched the hem of his garment.
Yeah.
Or even the woman at the well. It's about the one. We're not having a Billy Graham crusade in those grandstands, but there's one that God can put in your path that he's already doing something in their heart.
Yeah.
So be keenly aware of what the Holy Spirit is doing. And then as the leaders, I would encourage us all to keep the gospel, keep sharing the gospel, the idea of sharing the gospel simple for our volunteers. So don't use a recipe evangelism that requires a lot of memorization. I boil it down to two things. One is, what's your story? And then, what's your favorite Bible verse? Or is there a Bible verse that has spoken to you?
Yeah.
And my point is, if you know those two things, your story and one verse, do you think that our great God, who knows all of the stars by name, is capable of putting someone in your path who needs to hear your story or your favorite Bible verse?
Yeah.
And that's all you got to do.
Well, that can open up a lot of conversation right there. Yeah.
Yes.
Great points, Connie. Well, I continue to just be amazed at the opportunities that God opens up for us at the speedways. And of course, whenever that happens, it requires great stewardship on our part to be able to be sensitive to God's leadership and follow His guidance to put together the strategies that can work when we get out to the raceway. So I'm convinced that when March 20th, 21st comes, no matter what the limitations may be because of the pandemic, God's going to use you and your volunteers to do a mighty work there at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Very grateful for you. Any final thoughts that you might want to share?
Yes, I do. And it's 2 Timothy 4, verses 1 through 4, but I want to start with verse 3.
Okay.
And I'm very passionate about this. It says, "For a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They will follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They will reject the truth and chase after myths." I mean, does that sound familiar?
Wow, yes.
That's verses 3 and 4, but verses 1 and 2, and this is what I want to leave you with. It says, "I solemnly urge you in the presence of God and Christ Jesus, who will someday judge the living," that's us.
Yes.
Did we take the Great Commission seriously? "And the dead." There are dead people walking all around us.
Right.
When He comes to set up His kingdom, here it is. "Preach the word of God. Be prepared, whether the time is favorable or not."
Amen. What a great word. You know, I don't think anybody could say it any better than God Himself, Connie.
That's right.
And what you've just read is a perfect description of our world, and it's a perfect job description for what God has called us to be and to do. And I'm just so grateful that we have the opportunity to do it out in the midst of the most exciting sport in the world, and that is to crank up a car and hear it rumble and go around a track at 200 miles an hour and watch fans get on their feet and scream and act like idiots. But in the midst of it all, we get to share the good news. Yeah, it's very amazing.
And we can't waste this year, Roger. We can't waste this opportunity.
You're so right. We need to be good stewards of the opportunity that God's given to us, and I pray that March 21st will be a great time of getting the word out there in the midst of all the activities for you guys. We don't need to waste it. You're exactly right.
Thank you for praying for us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. We'll do that. And Connie, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you and your leadership there with Raceway Ministries Atlanta. For all of our listeners, we've been talking today with Executive Director of Raceway Ministries Atlanta, Connie Yancey. She and her husband live in Hampton, Georgia, not too far from Atlanta Motor Speedway, and they've been directing ministry there for the past 15 years. If you need to get in touch with Connie, you can go to Raceway Ministries Atlanta website. It's rmatl.org. You can email her at connie@rmatl.org. And you can go to the ivolunteer.com website and get signed up to work out there at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the upcoming NASCAR weekend. Connie, thank you for your time. Appreciate it so very much.
Thank you, Roger.
Yes, ma'am. You bet. And to all of our listeners, grateful that you joined us for today's podcast. And I hope that you enjoy the next curve in your road course race of life. And we'll look forward to seeing you in Victory Lane on down the way. And we'll look forward to having you on for our next podcast. Meanwhile, have a great week and a great weekend. Well, thanks so much for tuning in for today's podcast. We'll look forward to having you join us for the next edition of Raceway Ministries Today.